Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is a very, very, very important person. Tammy Joy Lane is a suicide prevention advocate and a veteran of 6 years in the U.S. Army. You can find out Tammy Joy Lane and her literally life-saving work at her wonderful website, yestokindness.com. Welcome, Tammy Joy Lane.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me here today. Happy to be here.
Well, I really wanted to do this show because during the coronavirus pandemic, the rates of depression and anxiety in the United States have been skyrocketing. The research shows that over a third of U.S. adults are suffering from clinical levels of anxiety and depression. And of course, we've got a lot going on in the society, and 11% of US adults have considered suicide during the pandemic. And then the latest research is that 25% of young adults ages 18 to 34 have considered suicide. So here at the Natural Healing Show, we want to do everything that we can to help you. And Tammy Joy Lane, let's start the show by sharing are there toll-free lines that people can call if they're feeling suicidal, where they can call to get immediate help?
Yes, there is. The suicide hotline is 1-800-273-8255. And you can also text HELP to 741-741. Which is exciting because when you're in a downward spiral, having a conversation about it isn't always that exciting, but texting seems to be a little bit easier. So that's good news.
That's wonderful news. Okay. And I think it's really important that we share that information. So Tammy Joy Lane, you spent 6 years in the U.S. Army. You went to Iraq. How did you get interested in becoming a suicide prevention advocate?
So I got into this because I was in the psych ward a lot when I came home. And, I felt like the military taught us good to go to war. They gave us the weapons, training, skills, and then coming home, it was kind of a bust. And just transitioning back into real life was very, very hard. I came home in 2004. I was in the psych ward 3 times that year. And then on and off for the next 9 years, I was in and out of husbands. I moved 30 times. I was just trying to outrun myself. And when my 4th husband left, I was like, oh, I must be part of the problem. Because before I was just blaming everything, blaming everyone. And that's when I really got into maybe kindness could help me. And I couldn't do a lot of self-love because I was acting in terrible ways. I was doing terrible things. And so actually doing kindness from the outside in helped me get to a place where I can love myself and care for myself. So
that's a very, very profound message. And I myself, I'm the author of 10 books, and 2 of my books are about how to heal depression without drugs. The updated book is called Banish the Blues Now. It's one of my 8 Amazon #1 bestsellers. And it's all about what you can do to heal yourself naturally. And kindness is critical for all of us, right?
Yes, it really is. Well, and what I realized about 2013, I had 2 kids under 1 year old, and I was just drowning fast because now I threw in postpartum depression into the mix, and I needed to help somebody. I needed to serve. But everyone I would try to help would just be, oh, just take care of you. You'll help someone, you're not in the helping people phase of life. Just take care of yourself. And that's where this idea of yes to kindness came from, was accepting help and letting people help you. Maybe it's not even about you. If I offer to help you, it could be so I don't die in my own head, and just that reset button of, okay, if I feel like I can contribute, I feel like I can keep living. But if I feel like I just have to sit here in this house and figure it out, it's terrible.
It's such a really very profound message. Now, Tammy Joy Lane, is it okay to talk about suicide? Or if we talk about suicide, does it give people ideas?
So it's definitely okay to talk about. It's pertinent to talk about, especially these days. Full on buddy check your friends. Text them, hey, buddy check, how's your mental health? Are you okay? And if they allude to suicide or allude to life would be better without me, I can't do this, then full on ask them, do you have a plan to kill yourself? Or on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is I'm going to do it tonight, and 10 is I'm happy as a peach. Then get the scale and just start having these conversations, because that vagueness of like, oh, I think they're not okay, but I'm just going to avoid it. It's just like not talking about sex. Like that doesn't make people not have sex by not talking about it, and just having an open conversation and knowing that they have you in that time of need to at least ask for the suicide number, or, just to reach out and know they're not alone. So.
Right. And I know it's absolutely heartbreaking for us to hear about people who committed suicide. About 2 years ago, I was reading the news. Actually, it was a year ago, I was reading the newspaper, and a client of mine who was a New York City policeman, I was just reading the news and I read that he committed suicide. And it was like, oh my God, this is such an awesome human being. He was very dedicated to his work. I mean, if anyone was going to be an amazing policeman, it was him.
Yeah.
And I helped him with some physical issues, helped him overcome some severe pain. But I wished he had reached out to me when he was feeling suicidal. And I know many of us feel that way. It's like, gosh, I wish my friend had just picked up the phone and called me.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I noticed there's this thing I would do. It's called fishing. Okay, if I was suicidal, I would say, hey, what are you doing? Can I come over? And so it's like a soft ask. It's like, I'm not going to just call my sister and be like, I am going to kill myself if you don't come over. But I would just fish, like, hey, can you get a drink? Or it's so if you say hard no to those kind of things, then I'm not going to say, can you save my life? Because you can't have dinner. And so just be aware. And I think talking about it and saying when you're not okay and being real allows other people to be like, oh, like she's not okay still, like she's this suicide prevention expert and she was in the psych ward in December 2019. So it's like being brave enough to say, I'm not okay. And if I say I am, I'm lying.
Right. Because we're all human, right? Now, Tammy Joy Lane, suicide prevention advocate, if someone we know is in a moment of crisis, what's the best thing that we can do to help someone?
Okay, so there's lots of debates about this, but what I have found personally is there's this thing called dumping, and they can just brain dump. And you just say, hey, you talk, I'll listen, I'm going to write it down. And I remember doing this for my sister, and I looked at her and I said, that is plagiarism. Those are my thoughts. Those are the thoughts I had. You stole them from me. And just seeing that the exact thoughts I had before my suicide attempts were the exact thoughts that she was having. I've done this with several friends, and nothing's new. It's like, I'm not good enough. The world, that I did save one of the papers, but I can't find it. But it's just exactly what I had been feeling. And if they take that out of their head onto paper, it loses the power. It's kind of like when you have a whole bunch of things to do and you're just spinning, spinning, spinning. But if you write it down, it's manageable. And that's how the thoughts in our heads are. And then convince them, or not convince them, but open up the opportunity to getting help. So I would say, you know, I have found that when I get in that space, I need professional help. And I had to realize I'm not a professional and I can't be saving everyone because it's exhausting. And my job is not to save, and taking that pressure off of ourselves. Like, my job is to save myself. So if I commit to not ever killing myself, then that is 100%, you know, guarantee that suicide is getting less and less. And so if we could just commit to it and realize when we're not okay, and say, I'm a no for now because I need to take care of myself. And it's hard to do. It is hard to do.
So that's some really great suggestions. So even if we're not a professional therapist, we can encourage our friend to talk and just write down whatever it is that we say, whatever they're saying. Do we give the notes back to the person or just throw them away? What do we do with that information once it's written down?
So if they're there with you, you could have them look at it or burn it, or there's all kinds of things. I don't know about keeping it, but just knowing that someone will listen without the after effects of, oh, they don't want to be convinced. I never wanted to be convinced of what I was thinking was wrong. So don't go into, well, they depend on you and your kids depend on you. Then that just adds more pressure. Just literally listen, dump, and say, what's the next step, you know, and get them into the next step rather than trying to convince them that what they're feeling is wrong.
So it sounds like what we're supposed to do is just unconditional listening.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
being a vehicle to listen, to be completely present, you know, opening our hearts without any judgment.
Yes.
Right. So Tammy Joy Lane, suicide prevention advocate, what can we do to prevent suicide?
So the main thing is just, okay, one sec. I got a kid in the room.
It's okay. So while Tammy Joy Lane is working with her kid, I will say that suicide is one of the leading causes of death in the United States. I believe that even normal times, you know, pre-COVID, suicide was the ninth leading cause of death. So it's something that we as a culture really need to address, and having people like Tammy Joy Lane who can share the messages about what we can do is really, really important. So Tammy Joy Lane, so again, the usual statistics are in normal times, whatever that is that suicide's the ninth leading cause of death. Do you know what it is presently in the United States? Is it still the ninth leading cause of death?
So I was reading that a suicide happened every 40 seconds and it's projected every 20 seconds because of this. So, I mean, there's going to be a spike, job losses, you know, family. I mean, I don't know if, that's a whole nother story, but just be nice and reach out to people and care for people, because there's heavy stuff. Everyone is carrying heavy stuff, which is always true, but now it's even more true.
Yeah, and I love your message about say yes to kindness. I'm very big on compassion, you know, because again, somebody can look good, like they've got all the limbs and it looks like everything's going okay with their life, but you never know what's going on.
Yeah.
Now, Tammy Joy Lane, what can we do to prevent suicide?
So I think thinking before we speak, before we tweet, text, fax. I've started doing this thing where, of course I get mad and I get ragey and I want to fight back, but I will send the text to myself and see how it feels, which is usually terrible. And, you know, there was this time this lady sent me a terrible text, and like that exact day my house had flooded and like all this hard stuff had happened. And I'm like, if she even knew what was going on, like, would she be so terrible? And I just try to remember that I don't want to be like the straw that broke anyone's camel. And just, I want to be like the hope straw and just paving forward a good, like when people think of you, do they smile? Do they cringe? Do they roll their eyes? Do they hit ignore? Or do they answer and they're excited to talk? And so it's just taking personal responsibility of what am I paving? Behind me, what is the trail I'm paving and forward? Like instead of paying it forward, like this idea of paving it forward and being, you know, overly gracious and overly thankful and saying thank you in advance and not just having these high expectations and like appreciation. Maybe appreciation cannot be an afterthought anymore in business, in families. It just has to be so integrated.
Right. And once we realize that statistically, so many of us are experiencing just extreme, severe levels of stress that's taken a huge toll on our mental health, then I feel that we have to give everybody a slack. We have to give ourselves slack. We have to give family members slack. It's just, you know, being present and allowing and compassionate and kind. So if someone we know, if we know someone that we care about and we think they're suicidal, what are some good questions to ask someone who we think is suicidal?
Okay, so an important thing we can ask is we can ask them to help us with something. Say they're really good at something, like literally say, hey, bro, can you help me with this plumbing thing? Like, I know you're an expert, you know, and just like getting them in your space and in your face, and not like nobody wants to be like, are you suicidal? What are you doing? What are you thinking? I'm going to send the police over. You know, like that doesn't feel good. Don't just like have the police show up. That, okay. I mean, in some cases that's probably good, but don't wait until they're on the edge of a cliff to try to help somebody. Notice the difference. Like, are they introverts and suddenly they're doing things out of the ordinary? Are they selling all their things? Are they, you know, just like total like differences in how they are? Those are big triggers, because once you decide to commit suicide, there's a freedom, and it's almost like the depression lifts because you have an end date. It's like if you have a terrible job and you're like, oh my God, you know, 20 more days, I can do it. But if you just are working at this terrible job and there's no end date, it's depressing. But as soon as you have an end date, it's like, okay, I can do anything for that much longer. And so just realizing and checking in and not just waiting till you need something to call somebody. You know, it's this joke. I have a few friends, I'll be like, I need something, so I'm calling you, you know, but not waiting until you need something to have an interaction.
Right. Yeah. And so one of your important suggestions is you ask the person who you are concerned may be suicidal, you ask them for help and you ask them for advice, right?
Yeah.
Because that makes the other person the expert, right?
And like they can contribute.
Right. I do know that there is a lot of research about how when someone helps you, they like you better. Right?
Yes. It's called the helper's high. Literally, it's endorphin, serotonin, all that goodness. So actually, I'm developing, it's not new, I didn't develop, but I'm researching this idea of actually helping people is selfish, and accepting help is the unselfish thing. because it's harder to accept help than to give it.
I love that. Well, tell us more about the helper's high.
Okay, so once I bought this website, High on Kindness, because I was like a fiend. I would be like, how can I help you? And how can I help you? And it was just like, I was just racing for that next high, to the detriment of myself and my family, because I was like, oh, we have bills, but that doesn't feel as good as like giving money away. And so I was just like, we got to watch out for that trap of, I got to help you, and so I'm not okay. And so just knowing that helping somebody, you get that high. Receiving, they get that high. So it's this cycle of yes. Because if you say, no, I'm okay, you put your hand up usually and you're like, no, I'm okay. I mean, you don't do it like this, but just like I don't know, just next time you say no, see if you put your hand up, and it stops the flow of kindness. And it's like, you don't know when you're going to need it. And so you keep that flow open. And especially with kids, if they want to help, let them help in a good enough way. Not like, oh, that's not good enough. Of course you can load the dishwasher better. Of course you can vacuum better. But just being like, awesome, thanks for your help. I think we wonder why kids these days are this way, is because nothing was ever good enough. You couldn't load the dishwasher right. You couldn't, and that feeling of not ever being good enough is terrible to be around. So.
Right. I love the idea of giving the other person the helper's high by asking them for help. And one of the things that we know is that there's basically 3 ways to be happy in life. First is physical pleasure. So that could be eating something that you enjoy, having physical intimacy, moving your body, yoga, dancing, walking. And then the second is soul satisfaction. So what's soul satisfying to one person might be watching football with their buddies and drinking beer. For somebody else, it might be walking in nature. But the most profound way to be happy in life is with what's called life meaning, which is where you feel like you're making a difference. Whether it's something as simple as, will you help me, clean up the kitchen after dinner, or, let's find a way to feed the homeless right now.
Yeah.
Let's find a way to, give somebody a laugh right now, right?
Yeah. And I think sometimes we get wrapped up in making it this big production, like it doesn't have to be a big thing. So I was driving past my friend's house, and we're not that great of friends. Like, I've bought flowers from her, and like we've interacted a few times in the community. We're Facebook friends. I just had this thought to stop and say hi, and I'm like, I don't have anything to give her. And I'm like, oh, why do we have to give something? So I literally showed up on this lady's door, and I just said, I'm just like saying I'm grateful for you, and you've made a difference in my life. And it was so strange because I was like, this is weird. And then later she texts me and she's like, thank you, I needed that. And it was just such this like weird thing that it was just so simple, and getting wrapped up in making sure it has a pretty bow, and making sure we've spent all this money we don't have to impress people we don't want. Or it's just like, let it go and let yourself be enough, and let them be enough.
Now, Tammy Joy Lane, what can we do to create a safety net for ourselves?
Okay, so this is my new exciting adventure. Just realizing that it's too late once you're on the side of the cliff. And I remember seeing that Congress paid like millions of dollars to build a net. And I'm like, oh my gosh, give me like a little bit of that, and I could save more than that net is gonna save, because it's this idea of being grateful in advance. And so I started sending out postcards, like thank you notes, to all kinds of people. But what I didn't realize would happen, people would send them back, or I'd get a text like, hey, I got your card. And so it was like this beautiful thing where I would send out, it would come back, and it was never with the expectation of getting it back, but it always came back when I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be nice. I don't want to do kindness. I'm going to go be a ornery old hag in the woods, So
So by creating a safety net for ourselves, you're talking about creating an emotional safety net so that we build up our inner resilience to keep, so that we don't mentally, emotionally even go into thoughts of suicide, right?
yes, exactly.
Right.
And also just realizing, like, let people be human and let yourself be human. Once I used to be like, if anyone's on time, off like a minute late, they're rude. And, this idea of like, this is how, and I'm like, life happens. And just knowing that you can be human around me. If you do business with me, you can be human. If you are my friend, you can be human. And just creating this space where it's safe to be human, it's safe to be messy, it's safe to be not on all the time, and not it. I would do on or gone. There was no messy me. It was just like I was like 100% awesome, or I was just gone. On or gone. I got to write that down. That was good.
Yeah, on or gone. Absolutely. Because we are all human. And, a lot of us are doing our best, but sometimes if you're exhausted or depressed or anxious, or you've lost your job, or you've lost your home, or somebody you love has died, your best may not be that great, actually.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's just like the moon. Like, nobody expects a full moon all the time. Like, I heard this from my friend Lisa. It's just like it's full sometimes, and then it's waning and waxing all the time. And so not only can we not compare ourselves to other people, but not even our yesterday to today. Because I know I'm not alone in some days I get stuff done and handled. And then some days I'm like, I can't get out of bed. And in the past, I would downward spiral for months because I couldn't get out of bed. Now I'm just like, I'm going to be like, I can do more in a bipolar minute than some people do in a lifetime. So I'm going to rest right now because I know it'll come back.
Right. So during this coronavirus pandemic, of course, we've had social isolation, which has been very hard because we humans are social people. How can we make connections during this time of isolation, and meaningful connections that help sustain us mentally, emotionally, and spiritually?
Yes. So instead of just scrolling Facebook mindlessly, if you see somebody lost their cousin or something happened, like reach out to them and be like, hey, I saw you lost your cousin, or, thinking of you, or just acknowledging that you see them and you're there. Or if your friend writes a crazy post, just be like, are you okay? Like, that wasn't a regular post like you usually post. Are you okay? And then just, let's have a Zoom coffee. I've been doing Zoom coffees, and just still putting yourself out there to be open to connection, because we have so many ways to connect. It's just about being present where you are, and not like, there'll be times where I don't see my kids for hours, and then I'm like, okay, this isn't working for me. Like, I need to be a mom, and I need to make sure they know that I love them. And ideally, if the whole world could just commit to themselves not to commit suicide and love their families hard. And Mother Teresa, I got to have a talk with her, because she said, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And then I always joke, well, she didn't have a husband. So it's like, but so true. So too many of us are out there trying to save this and save that, and then becoming a shell of ourselves and losing our families and kids. I mean,
Right. And so during this time of the coronavirus pandemic, when so many people are facing emotional, mental challenges.
words of I love you so much don't match my reactions of like, Mom, it's just water, like it's okay to be messy. And I try to teach my kids, it's okay to make a mess. You just can't act like you didn't. And not teaching our kids how to be perfect and stay in the lines, but like, great. If you paint all over, it's fine. It's just stuff. Let's clean it up,
So Tammy Joy Lane, suicide prevention advocate, how do I ask for help when I feel like I need to be the strong one?
Okay, so what you do is you make a list. You have a running list of people who you can talk to or trust, or it's kind of like you have a bank account with, and you ahead of time say, like today you would call them and say, if I ever get in a point where I'm not okay, are you a 24/7 person? Are you a 9 to 5 person? And whatever they say is okay, but knowing that basically if I get suicidal, I have like one call. I'm not going to go through the whole list. I'm going to call one person. And if it goes bad or they don't answer, like that's not going to end good. And so just creating a plan ahead of time you don't ever know what's going to happen. Like everybody could say, oh, I've never had mental health. I've never had that. And then it's like, well, boom, boom, boom happens and you can't breathe. You could get there. And so just like having a plan ahead of time, like, but when we were little, you'd have 911 on the fridge, or I don't know what it is over there, but it's like, because when you're in panic mode, you can't think. And my brain would cancel out every person on the list. They don't bother them, or yeah, they said I could call them anytime, but they didn't mean it. And so what people that don't struggle with this have to realize, it's not personal. And it's not like they didn't reach out because they don't care. It's literally, I could rationalize myself out of my own life and make it so I was right, that the world would be better, that they wouldn't be burdened, that it would just be easier. And so it's not about just reaching out because of what the mind does.
Right. So what you're suggesting is that if in yourself that you realize, gosh, I've been having some suicidal thoughts recently, a really good thing to do is to make a list of people who care about you and to reach out to them and say, hey, if I'm having a hard time, may I call you? And if I do call you, as you said, can I call you 24/7, or are there certain times of day that you really don't want me to call you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really a brilliant suggestion. And then what do we do with this list? Do we keep it on our cell phone or in our journal? Where do we keep this list of the emotional support people?
Yeah, ideally on the fridge. So you can, if it's in your phone, it's too easy to lose. If it's a piece of paper, or if not on your fridge, then, up on your desk or somewhere that you can go. And just knowing, like, so I'll put I have them saved in my phone 24/7 and then their name. So sometimes I'll type in 24/7 and just see who comes up, and I'm like, okay, I got this. I'm not alone. I'm going to make it through tonight. And I try not to make a decision like wait till morning. If you're going to do it, wait till morning, because there's something about the sunrise that just kind of can work things out. And just realizing the troops aren't coming. We are the troops. Like, when you finally realize that point where you can't call your mom because you are the mom, and that's where we're at. It's like, we have to be like, I have to save my own life. I have to say no to you because I got to take care of me. And it's the hardest thing to realize that no is a final sentence. I can't even say it right because it's so hard for me to say no, but you can't be everything to everyone always.
Right. So you were suggesting that if someone does feel suicidal in the middle of the night, they hang in there to the morning, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Just wait till morning. It's like if you're going to buy a big purchase, wait 3 days, just give yourself 3 days.
Right. And what does that 3-day waiting period do for somebody who's considering suicide?
So it can just get you out of that moment, and it can help you get through, the darkest night, like 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. where it's just like the darkness of the tunnel, and realizing like maybe that you have to be your own light, and just realize, gosh, look down at your shoes and say, no one can fill these shoes. And your job's going to be replaced before your funeral. And so focusing, this is what I was thinking of, is like, what do you really want? What makes you happy? And then start talking about what you want, thinking about what you want. Because as humans, I feel like we talk about what we don't like. We talk about, and we get in this downward spiral. And it's so much easier to say than do. Like I made a video when I was super depressed, and I said, if you ever get undepressed, Tammy, you better not just tell people to choose to be happy. So I gotta go find that video, because it's as you're in the moment. It's not just like choose happiness, because happiness feels like a yellow sweater in a room full of gray and black. And so those kind of comments that are like the cliche, just choose to be happy, just doesn't help.
Doesn't help. So I want to offer a resource for our listeners that may help you at really 2 a.m. or anytime. During the coronavirus pandemic, I've given away one of my 10 books for free. It's the Little Book of Breathwork. So if you're listening to this broadcast, please send me an email, Catherine@CatherineCarrigan.com. No string attached. I will send you a free copy of the Little Book of Breathwork. The Little Book of Breathwork is breathing exercises, hand mudras, and affirmations that you can use. And it has a little routine in it that I call 8 minutes to inner peace, and it'll cut anxiety in half in 8 minutes, which is faster than drugs work. Let's face it. So I feel that one of the things that we can do to prevent suicide is to develop, emotional coping skills, right? So that you have ways of handling a bad day. And you may have a bad day, you may have a bad week, you may have a bad month, you may have a really bad year, right? But when you develop these skills, it's very helpful. I teach yoga 6 times a week and Qigong once a week. I pray and meditate. These are all the things that I do. This is my mental health program. Now, Tammy Joy Lane, why is saying yes when kindness is offered so important? Why is it so important to accept the help that other people want to give us?
So it's just back to that idea of keeping the flow going. And, once you cut it off, you don't know when it's going to start going again. And just knowing that accepting kindness is half the deal. You can't just give. That's not fair. You have to do your part of accepting. And it's so many people I talk to asking for help and receiving help is so hard for them. And when I started Yes to Kindness, that was the main point, is teaching people how to receive help and how to realize that saying yes and receiving help is blessing. It's not burdening, and that is the beauty of it. And this, I don't know if this is a tangent, but sharing the good you do, because the bad things in the world or whatever are being shared and tweeted, and then good things are happening, and everyone's just keeping them so quiet and private. I'm like, no, if kindness, like Wayne Dyer said, if kindness is shared, heard, listened, happened to, it raises everyone's vibration. And so I would, if you're listening to this, I would recommend you to start sharing the good you do, because it inspires others to think, I could do that. Like, I can't go maybe feed the homeless, but I could smile, or I could say thanks at the beginning of my email, or after I've been on hold for 57 hours on hold, I could just start by saying thank you to that person for being here and not go into attack mode. And all these simple things that you don't know what someone's on the other line. Every interaction, you don't know what just happened. Do I have time for a quick story?
Yes, absolutely. Please.
I don't know what time it is, but so I was at Colorado. I was at this hotel and we needed a shuttle somewhere, and the lady was being so rude. And I was just like, I usually wear a shirt called Yes to Kindness, but I grew out of them all. And so I have to be nice because it's awkward if Yes to Kindness lady is losing her crap. And so I was just in my head thinking, what is her problem? And then I'm like, be nice, Tammy, be nice. And we started talking, and she opened up to me, and she told me how she was struggling and she's going into surgery. And she like literally had a pee bag on the outside of her body under her jacket. And I thought, I would probably be that way too if my pee was on the outside of my body. And I'm like, yeah, we wear clothes and we wear jackets and we put on smiles and we put on scowls to protect us, but we're all just like kind of falling apart a little. And it's just like, oh my gosh, let people be human and let people have this buffer of life.
That's such a powerful message. Tammy Joy Lane, is there any hope when someone gets into that dark place of thinking about suicide and, mentally obsessing on these dark thoughts? Is there any hope to interrupt that cycle?
Yes, there's always hope wherever anyone is and whatever's happening. Like, I think back of all the times I was there and just the small things that happened, like an email coming at the right time, a text, a letter in the mail, all these like divine interventions of someone being kind. It does matter. It does make a difference. Like, you don't think it matters sometimes, and you get tired, and then you just think it's easier to be nasty, but really, really, truly, it matters, and it matters in a big way. And I don't think people realize how much of their impact goes out for good. And your ripple's always going out. You're like having a crap ripple or a good ripple or a thoughtful ripple. So it's just like, okay, when I die, like my cousin Chuck says, don't live in a way people have to lie at your funeral. Just
That's great advice.
yeah. So
right. Now, Tammy Joy Lane, how can we help make the world safe to be human? And help the world so that it's safe to have these bad days and to have these, challenging feelings? How can we help make that world safe in that way?
Okay, so the way that we can make the world safe to be human is by starting to think about what you actually want and move forward in that direction and talk about what you want. And then support others. And if they have an idea, like my husband is a pro, I have ideas, and he's just like, that seems like a good idea. And he lets life kill my dream. He doesn't kill it. And we could do better at that, is just letting people like be excited and let life figure it out. And then also is just think before you say something. And with social media, it's so easy to just type a nasty gram, or you can just, hide someone's comment and it's over. And you could take a break from social media and like have a break, and you could go out. Oh man. So I've been going to therapy for 20 years, and just this therapist since January, she's starting to talk about this idea of mental hygiene. And I'm like, how have I never heard of this? I'm like a pro student therapy client, and just, realizing every day you brush your teeth twice a day. Every day you got to brush your brain, and the thoughts you have create these shots. And so you don't have control what comes in, but you have the story. You can create the story around it. And I remember one day she goes, "Do you want me just to coddle you until your next psych ward visit, or do you want to make actual change?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. And one of the things I'm always explaining to people is the law of karma. So first of all, what is karma? Karma is the results, you receiving the results of the energy you put out into the universe. And I always feel the most selfish thing I can do is be kind, generous, and thoughtful to everyone, because whatever I put out is what's going to come back. And okay, Tammy Joy Lane, any final thoughts about suicide prevention?
So just go home and love your family, and love yourself, and schedule yourself in. We make time for everyone else, and we go out of our way for everybody else. And it's just like, you have to take care of you. You have to love you.
Right. You're listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. This is Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 bestselling author. Our guest today has been Tammy Joy Lane, suicide prevention advocate. And remember, when you take the time to be kind and you put kindness out into the world, that's what you receive back. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.